Hello, and welcome back to In Deep, where we discover the talent, inspiration, and challenges behind our favorite films, television, games, and advertising. With me today is Owen Trevor, director and writer. But before we introduce him, he's sitting kindly on hold, very patiently waiting. I would like to remind you all to subscribe, follow Owen and all the other socials that I'm going to give you, and make sure that you say hi in the chat, and so we can support you guys and follow you back and find out more about you. As I said, today will be Owen Trevor. I'm just going to quickly point you to some of his socials and his website. His website, of course, to find out more about him is lankyboy.com, where you can go to some of his work, whether it's commercial work, music, or film and television, get to know a little bit more about him. In terms of Instagram, you can find him on the tag of Owen_Trevor, and on Twitter, just gonna give it all away, Owen_Trevor again as well. I like consistency, and of course you might be familiar with him from being represented by Stink Films, and then also in other territories through his own company, Rabbit. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Owen to the show. Welcome, Owen. You're live. How you doing, man? How's it going?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Thank you. Nice. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm at home in the lovely Cambridgeshire countryside, waiting out this thing that we're all waiting out with 3 kids homeschooling and, just waiting. Lots of writing and lots of... there's some pitching going on, which is interesting, remote directing stuff, which is fun.
Oh yes, I think I just last time we spoke, you were talking about some remote directing. Have you had your first shoot yet, or what?
No. It's still a couple of weeks away, but looking forward to it. It's going to be weird. I guess it's just going to take longer. Filmmaking's already slow, but doing it remotely is going to be even slower, I presume. But it's a good challenge, You know me. I like doing lots of different things and trying to, keep it fresh. So we'll see. See how it goes.
You're not daunted by it at all. Are you going? What is it going to entail, like from a directing point of view?
Oh, look, it's a pretty simple one, really. It's a bit of a piss take mockumentary thing, which I've done a few times before. That aesthetic that I guess people know my stuff me for a little bit is going to be less prevalent, and it's going to be more just performance based and a little bit of a piss take, bit of fun. So we'll see. It could be good.
Oh, wonderful. I'm just going to take a quick moment to remind everybody, say hello to Natalie, Nick, Lily, Dane. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. If anybody is in the audience, I can see there's a number of people there sitting and watching at home. Definitely say hi in the chat, and if you have any questions at any stage, let us know. We will see what we can do to get Owen to answer everything as candidly as possible. So what besides like childcare things, which obviously takes up a huge amount of time and is very difficult, is there anything that you're clinging on to that you're maybe enjoying about this experience or rethinking?
Look, it gives you a chance to kind of sit back. Like, I haven't updated my website in about 3 years, so I'm supposed to be doing that, which I haven't made a lot of progress. Mm-hmm. But there's probably 40 commercials that I haven't got on there, so wow. It's about time to get working on that. And just working on a lot of long form stuff. Since the film came out, there's a lot of different opportunities, and that's nice to kind of get into development and explore developing projects with various writers, or me writing, or working with my producers kind of in different territories around the world, just working on stuff that normally you kind of set aside because you're being offered some money to go and shoot. I don't know what we're looking at now, a guy with an apple for a head in a bar. So and that means that you push aside your features and your TV ideas and all that kind of stuff because they're not paying right now. So it's nice to kind of, I guess, deep dive into some kind of personal stuff or some other projects that are may be longer gestating.
And that's one of the main things that I really wanted to talk to you about, because it was really interesting from our initial chat the other week. The idea that you have, and that's kind of core to your philosophy of how to be quite believe in that not everything will land, and to be you're a bit of a creative entrepreneur in a way, not necessarily just pigeonholed as just not that there's anything simple about being a director, but you have your a lot of different interests and fingers in many pies, right?
Yeah, look, I guess it's a philosophy. I don't think it'll apply to every filmmaker out there, but I guess I believe that I love film in all its forms. I think that I've had a lot of fun making commercials over the years and music videos and TV shows and now film. And I think that, I believe in the multidisciplinary approach to directing, I think, and being a DP or whatever. Like, I think that you learn from all the different formats, and there's a lot of different fun to be had bouncing between them. I think there is this thing when you're starting out as a filmmaker, and I'm sure some people will believe this, and that's fine, but that, you're aiming for features, and features are the only thing, and that's all you should think about. But, ads are fun as well, especially if you get to make the stupid shit that I make. It's a great medium to play, and you can focus. One of the things I love about advertising is the level of detail. People assume that when you go in and make a feature film or a big TV show that you're going to get to apply the same amount of precision and detail that you do in advertising, and it's impossible. You can't. We shot a feature film in 30 days, and it had 5 motor races in it and crashes, etc. I had like 6 days to shoot the race sequences. You can have 6 days to shoot one 30-second car ad.
Well, before you dive into that whole experience, let's take this moment to quickly rewind. I'd love to give everybody an idea of your background and how you came to this industry. We chatted very briefly before about all the different twists and turns, and you gave us a bit of a potted history of how you come from a family of actors, right? And you studied at, is it UTS? Is that right?
Yeah. Look, on my dad's side, they were all actors going back a few generations. My grandfather was a pretty well-known actor in Australia back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really like being on camera that much. I mean, I don't mind this, but, if I have to do anything other than just talk and be just me, then I never felt comfortable. And so that was one of the things that my dad, suggested. He was like, hey, but you like being a creative and you like being a bit of a leader, you should try directing. And that was when I was about 16, I guess. And I guess it's all I've ever really done. I'm not the Spielberg type where I went and made a feature at 23 or whatever, but I've always been dabbling in film of some kind since the beginning. So yeah, like I did the pretty standard route of like, start making stuff with your mates and try and make short films and make really terrible stuff. And then eventually you make something that's a bit better and it's okay. And then another friend who's a musician asks you to make a music video and you make a music video. And then that music video maybe wins an award or gets you a paid music video and you've got $300 to make the video this time instead of 5.
When did you do you?
Yeah, and then I guess my short films just got better and ultimately, having come out of UTS, which is, one of the better schools in Australia. It's not AFTRS, but it was a pretty great school, the period that I was in. And a lot of the guys I was at UTS with have gone on to do great things, including the sound designer and composer on my feature, Brendan Moiti, and my business partner in Rabbit in Australia, Lucas Jenner, who was at UTS with me, and we now have, one of the better, I guess, one of the 5 or 6 best companies in Australia. So, that was a really good period. And then I guess, my films started doing really well and winning awards and playing in festivals. And, I won an MTV Music Video Award, which was kind of cool for a pretty cheesy music video, to be honest. And then, I started getting paid, I guess. And then that's when Top Gear came and I went and did Top Gear and then came out the other side. Do you want me to do this history?
No, that's okay. We can get through all of it. Enjoying a little swim. I wonder, at what point did you start, or did you realize that you'd made a good short as opposed to a bad short? Because everybody makes terrible shorts. But when did you realize that you made something good and it started really to stick with you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think it's when you realize that short form is its own form, and like you can approach it in 2 different ways. Like I feel like you can make a short to show that you can make a feature. Like it could be just a scene, or it could be a style piece, or it could be a short designed to help you get advertising. I made a short called 2 Laps that did really well, that got me back into advertising after everyone thought I was a car ad director. And I wanted to get back to comedy. So I made this short that was 3 minutes long, and it was purely geared towards advertising. As a short, Yeah, it's good. As a short that helped me get ads, it's great, So I think they are their own little creature, and I think that what makes them good is it's the standard, it's story and it's people, right? It's great acting. And I think the thing that everyone always focuses on when they want to be directors is the cinematography and the design and the look. And I made this mistake, and I think that if that can come, anyone can shoot pretty pictures at the end of the day, but can you make humans interesting and tell interesting stories and cast well? Yeah. So when did it get good? I don't know, man. When it started, people started watching it and responding to it, and it got into festivals and won awards and stuff, I guess. But you're playing Two Laps right now, which I think is a lovely little film.
Yeah, it is really lovely. When did you? So you made this later on your thing, but when do you remember who your early heroes and influences were at the very beginning, and have who were they? And actually, I'll ask the other question afterwards. When you were...
Look, the early influences are the classic, film directors. I was obsessed with Hitchcock and Spielberg and Kubrick and Scorsese, like everyone else, right? But I guess as a professional, I think, and particularly for what I'm known for in advertising, or when I realized that advertising was something you could do that was interesting, was just early tractor commercials. I just was obsessed with Evil Beaver and the ESPN cliff diving films and Belly's Gonna Get You and My Time, and then that leads you down a path of falling in love with Jonathan Glazer, who I clearly am referencing right here for Guinness Swimming. And then you start deep diving into advertising legends. But I'd say Glazer and Spike Jonze and Tractor were always the three that I kind of always lent on. And I think particularly Spike, what I love is the way he can dance between stupidity, playfulness, and true depth of warmth and heart. And I think that's something that I'd like to think I'm reasonable at too.
And that's something that you have...
Not that I'm in his league.
No, I think it's entirely good and admirable to have that sort of goal always in mind. At least it might not be in the same form, but at least to always be aiming for that. Have you developed any new heroes that you're following, or have you left a few behind?
Good question. Look, like everyone right now, I think that Ian Ponsjewel is pretty much just beasting us all. And full credit to him, the guy works his ass off. So I think right now he's influencing the culture, which is a significant thing to say. Glazer and Tractor and Spike, those guys influence the culture of filmmaking across the board, and I think Ian's doing that right now. Who else is influenced? There's a production designer I work with a lot, who Ian also works with a lot, called Mark Connell. I just think the guy's a genius, and his visual aesthetic and his approach to filmmaking is beautiful, and you should try and interview him on here because he's a wonderful man. And then film-wise, I guess, look, Sorrentino right now is a pretty big one.
Nice.
I haven't thought about who my other references are right now, who I'm a bit obsessed with. Bong Joon-ho, right? Parasites.
Yeah, hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Perfect, yeah. And everything he's made is great. So, yeah, there's a lot of them out there. And across everything, music and art and theatre and, literature, there's countless people. We could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you went from short films into promos, and that's kind of how you honed your craft, would you say? It was through that, and I remember you mentioning that you kind of funded your more creative projects through corporate films and stuff as well, which is, I think, important to say, because I think a lot of creative directors at this level often don't mention that sort of period, or how they paid for those things. Tell us a bit about that part of your journey.
Well, the first part of your question, I haven't finished honing my craft. I don't think we ever do. But to go beyond that, I think it's a hard one. I don't know. I think I've gone in and trying to break down 4 of your questions in one. But rejig me on exactly what you want me to.
Sorry. It was a roundabout, ridiculous question. Just in terms of you starting, you were talking about how you formed relationships at uni and started promos.
Yeah. Look, the corporate film thing was something we did when we were trying to make small shorts and just finance them. I've been lucky. I've never had a real job. I've never had a job other than this, and that's just stubbornness, and also being from a middle class Australian, background. You can afford to do that. That's a very lucky, privileged position to be in. And I worked in cinema as a projectionist, and I worked in a video store, like the Tarantino cliche, paying the bills via that. And then we actually paid for the short films by going out and shooting corporates. Like I'd go and do a really boring gig filming a medical conference or something.
Yeah.
And then eventually, yes, started getting paid in promos. So a guy who I ended up making the feature with, Jamie Hilton, had a promo company in Sydney, and he just tapped me up one day and said, do you want to come and make some promos? And I said, sure. And we did. And they were big, pop, cheesy things that thankfully you're not playing on this little thing right here. But they were great because I got paid and I got learned how to work with big crews and all that kind of stuff, kind of on stuff that didn't make my heart beat, but got me working as a director. And then from there I got to do more interesting promos, and then from there I got to do little viral commercials and videos and things like that, and then ultimately moved into TV.
And so with moving into TV, how did that come about? And you've kind of just hinted at the fact that you even through things that maybe necessarily won't exactly what you set out to do, you seem to make sure that you take away something from each experience. How did you get into TV, and what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to note that even when I was doing stuff that I didn't love, we were always making the other stuff on the side. And that's a hard thing to keep doing because you're like, oh, I'll be paid over here and over there. That's just a fun thing. But I think, making like 2 Laps, I made that in the middle of Top Gear. Like I was in my 3rd season of Top Gear. Well, that's leaping ahead, right? So yeah, Top Gear, they saw a viral film that I made, a comedy piece that I made, and asked me to come in for an interview, offered me a trial, and I stuck around for 5 seasons, following those 3 blokes around the world, making, a very big, crazy TV show that I had no true directorial kind of control over. Visually, yes, but narratively and character-wise, those guys are who they are. So the big takeaway there for me was, I learned how to work in the bigger apparatus. I learned how to shoot cars, which is a very handy thing to have as a director because, people don't believe you can shoot cars until you've shot cars. But I also realised what I really wanted to do was to get back to comedy and go back and start doing fun stuff again. So straight out of Top Gear, I was being paid to do big car corporate commercials, which I think you were hinting at just before, which, ultimately meant that I got to, travel the world and shoot sheet metal moving through frame, but there was no heart, there was no warmth. So I chased the comedy thing and basically gave up a career as a commercials car director, which is a hard thing to do because, 5-6 years ago, they paid pretty darn well. Yeah. And I just chased doing comedy stuff. And I think probably the big turning point is that I was doing car ads in Sydney, and this script came across the desk of the production company that I was at. And I said, that's the best script I've ever read. I love it. I want to pitch for it. And the EP who owned the company was like, it's not for you, mate. It's for Bart Timmer, another great director who I lost a pitch to yesterday. But it was in for Bart Timmer, and I said, I want to pitch for it anyway. I don't care if I don't get the job. I'm just going to practice how to pitch for a proper comedy thing. So I went and made this documentary about the commercial as if I'd already made the commercial. So I interviewed actor friends of mine who played professors who talked about you can see Owen's reference here. So I basically created a treatment reference in video documentary form. It was pretty funny. And I dropped it off in person to the agency, and the CD of the agency called me direct on my way. I'd been gone. I was driving home. I was about 40 minutes away from the agency. And he said, we're still waiting on Tim Godsall, who at the time was the biggest director in the world, Tim Godsall's treatment, and we're waiting on Bart Timmer's treatment, but we think you should do the job. And so I had the job, and I had my first comedy ad, and from there it was and it turned out really well, thankfully. Yeah.
What is it about comedy that's always called to you as something? What is it about that that's always...
Comedy's a funny thing because I'm not entirely sure I am just like I am a comedy director, because I don't think you laugh that loudly at my stuff. I think I think it's more a smirk. So I think I just like making
A smirk director.
makes you smile. I think I like trying to tell stories where you're not actually overtly playing for comedy in the moment, but the comedy is from the filmic construct. This is a good example, like this Energy film is on screen right now. Like that, inherently within each of those moments that he's playing right now, there's no comedy, but the comedy comes from the context. And I think that is what I love, because you get to play in a genre film here, right? A disaster movie-esque kind of thing. And if you could hear the sound, it would make even more sense. But then you put a layer on the outside that gives it a different point of view.
Is playing with genre one of your other favorite things to do?
Yeah,
you turn your hand to a lot of different things.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm a strong believer that a good filmmaker is a good filmmaker, and I think you should be able to play. I'd love to make a thriller. I'd love to do a pure drama piece. I've done theatre in Sydney where we did like a really dark, sad, bleak drama, and it was a real interesting thing to do, and it did really well, and it pushed me into places that I couldn't hide behind my quirky framing and my clever art direction. I had to tap right into the meat of the performances. So yeah, I think so. I think you've got to play in all. You don't have to. You know what? No one has to copy you or listen to me. But I think it's interesting to do a Spielbergy kind of version of a McVitie's ad and score it with that music and cast it with a guy who looks like he's from the Goonies or something. I think that's fun.
You got to master the craft, I guess, before you can do put too much of your own spin on it. One of the other pieces that you cited actually was this Pizza Capers job that I'm currently playing on the screen right now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this project and what came as a result of it?
This is a funny one. I mean, it's a really hard one. If any of you haven't seen this, you should watch it with the sound because it's kind of crucial. But this was a big one. This broke me out quite a lot. So I had already done that Wild Turkey one that I was telling you about where I won it with the documentary. And this came from, at the time, a pretty small agency called The Monkeys in Australia, who are now like the best agency in Australia. And they were old mates of ours. We'd known them for a long time. And Scotty just rang me up and said, me and Lucas, Rabbit at that stage was the two of us on a desk. And he just said, hey, we've got $30,000 and a stupid script. Do you want to come and do it? And I said, yes. And we kind of just spitballed at him and I, and we did it. And the client, luckily, knew they were only spending $30,000, so they didn't really have a say. And we did all of this madness, I'm the voice of the banana, etc.
Nice.
But it blew up and it won, best 30-second ad of the year that year in Australia. And then it got into shots, and then the UK was calling, and it was a big deal. And it kind of got me up onto the top seat, which is funny because it's such a simple, small, stupid little thing. And it just goes to show that, like, I guess, you can make something of anything, like you're not going to. The biggest jobs I've done, the ones with millions and millions and millions of dollars, are not necessarily on my reel, in fact, none of them are. It's the ones generally where you have to find a clever way of doing something because of the limitations, and it pushes you into a place of maybe you were a bit uncomfortable, and so you had to come up with a clever way of doing it. So, yeah. Pizza Capers, I love that. I still love that film.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So when... sort of the success, you mentioned Rabbit a couple of times, your success in commercials is also the beginning of another chapter for you. Can you tell us a little bit about what the motivation was behind setting up another company? Because I mean, most directors don't set up their own companies. What was your thought behind that, and why did you feel you needed to set that up?
Look, it's a lot. It is a long story.
Okay,
but I'll try and condense it. I mean, I always wanted to have my own production company. Like you said, I'd like to think that I'm a little bit more than a director. Not that just being a director isn't enough, but that I enjoy the process of nurturing other filmmakers, and I love the idea that you're building something beyond these beautiful, transient little 30-second things or 2-hour-long films. And I love filmmakers, like I love it when filmmakers, reach out. There's not too many of you, so I can say this live. But, that when they reach out with a question, like, why not? I was afraid to call directors when I was starting and say, hey, how do you do this? Or what did you do there? Or could I come and shadow you? It's a nice thing. And so having a roster of, what have we got, 13 or 14 directors now at the company is a really beautiful thing to share. And it also, I guess there's a practical nature to it, is that, you have a shelf life as a director. 3 or 4 years ago, I was a much more successful director. I don't mind saying, in the UK, like I was seeing a lot better stuff than I see right now. And that day may return or it may not. Who knows? But luckily I work a lot in other countries. But I think that there is a finite. Who were the biggest directors 5 years ago? It wasn't. Ian Pons, Jewell and Kim Gehrig. It was other people. And 5 years before that, it was other people. But a lot of those guys are still working. So I hope they've set themselves up with something to help them pay the bills. So my idea was that, if you can build a company and create an environment that people like being in. And, we look after someone I pitch against all the time, Jeff Lowe, who's a genius, one of the best directors on the planet. We look after him in Australia. And the rivalry between him and I in terms of, pitching against each other doesn't count, because we make great stuff as a team down in Australia, with him working with my production people down there, which I think is a really nice thing. And I guess it's a legacy as well. And it means that we've been able to open like a feature and TV company there as well, which is developing stuff. And then we've got an events company as well that, makes experiential stuff as well, which is really nice and fun.
So with that, before we move actually into the features thing, which is entirely different and interesting story, how you've moved quite a lot around the world, and you talk about maintaining an international presence or a local presence as to where you are. Could you tell us a little bit about all the places that you've moved to, and sort of how have you been maintaining a presence, and has that been, or what sort of difficulties have you found in that challenge in itself?
Look, it is. It's a real thing. Like, I'm lucky that the majority of the work that I'm known for, as per like the thing that's on screen right now, Sloggy, is dialogue free, which means that you are perceived as less of a risk in Germany or France or any other country that speaks where English isn't the dominant language. In saying that, I have directed ads in German and in French and in other languages that I don't necessarily speak. But there is definitely a benefit to being a non-dialogue based so-called comedy director, and because that means you have a universal appeal. How do you maintain that? It's hard, really hard, and it's hard work. Like right now, my biggest market is France. I see countless scripts in France right now. But it took me years to get into France. I'm a bit quiet in the UK right now, except the ad I've just finished is going to be amazing, and you're all going to see it and you're all going to love it. I'm quite busy in Australia right now. So there's a little bit of luck, but I'm also I'm involved in that. Like you try and form really strong relationships with your EP or your production company in those countries, and you keep in touch with them and make sure you're friends with them. If you're not friends with them, then move to another company, because this game's too exhausting to hang out with people you don't like. And I love the people that I work with, the guys in Berlin and the guys in Paris and the guys in LA and the guys in New York and the guys in Sydney. They're all wonderful people to hang out with. So that makes it easy, because you can just call them and say, hey, man, what's going on? Is there anything around? No, there's no scripts. Okay, cool. No worries. What have you been up to? And you have a chat. And then the next week a script comes in and they go, oh, I remember Owen rang me last week. Oh, yeah, we should put him on this. He'd be great.
It's more than the way that you describe it. It's a lot more than hedging your bets and just staying visible. It's a big part of that and you've got to enjoy it. I imagine that to do that, and on top of playing a part in a company as well, you've got to wear a lot of hats. I mean, is sort of constantly switching that up and being a little bit. Being involved in a lot of decisions and playing a lot of roles, is that something that you crave and enjoy? Do you or do you wish that you had less to manage in your day to day?
Look, it's fairly well managed. Look, the day to day running of my company is managed by my partners. I'm very lucky there. I only really get involved in director hirings and big decisions about money or whatever. I'm very lucky in that sense, you know. So no, generally I try and stick to being a writer or a director. More so though, and we're about to get to long form. You know, I am playing a role as a producer in long form projects, TV and film. So that is taking up more of my time, and that is an exhausting thing and a different hat to wear. But yeah, look, I think it's important to stay excited and interested. I love this job. Like that's the thing. Like if someone hires me or they get the treatment or whatever, like I'm never going to go for it unless I love it. I adore it. You know.
So on that actually. In making features seems to be the end goal for a lot of directors, and see commercials as either a way to sort of hone their craft and prove themselves, and before making the leap to films and television. Has it always been an end goal for you? I mean, obviously, from what you said and things, it might not have been. But how did you? What was your sort of trajectory into doing this? Has it always been like, that's what I want to do, and then that's my ultimate goal, or is it something different?
Yeah, no, look, I mean, it was to begin with. Yeah, I think that everyone goes, oh, I want to make movies. You know, maybe the next generation is going to be like, I want to make, I don't know, TV, because TV is the dominant form right now, right? But it was. But I think that, you know, I very quickly, like I said, when I discovered Tractor and Spike and Blazer, I was like, oh, wow, you know, advertising's pretty amazing. But no, yeah, features are to me, the pinnacle. But I believe that, I think it's really fun and exciting, and it helps you grow if you do dabble in multiple formats and forms, and they are merging and blending, and, you know, constantly. I think that, you know, again, Spike is a really, really good example, because, you know, the guy goes and makes a music video every now and then, or he makes an ad, or he just goes and makes a short film for no particular reason, or a music video for Arcade Fire or someone like that. You know, like that, he's very lucky that he gets to do that, you know, on a whim. But he's built that, and he's like you said, he's kept his toe in those things, which I think is a really cool thing to do. Now, it's not for everyone, and I guess the reality, what you're probably leaning towards, is some of the stuff I've said before about features, is that they're really hard, and you don't get paid very much to do them, and they don't always work out, and you're not the boss. You're not the boss, and film school doesn't really brace you for that. Like that, you're really not the boss, and so. Whereas in advertising, we're still kind of treated like artists, and the producer works for us, you know, for example. So I think that there's a lot to be said for playing around in all the different film options you have, and not just saying, oh, I'm going to go to features and then I'm going to be rich and famous, because there is a reality aspect to this as well. You've got to pay your bills, and I tell you, I can pay my bills on the fees that I got from the feature I did.
Well, or Top Gear. Well, sorry, spoiler, guys. Just careful which rainbows you chase there. But I think that's a really important thing, because so many people, and when we're taught that from a young age, or especially at university or at college or whatever, that is the goal. It's the goal is that high art form, and yet the practicalities of that is not sort of told. And also I think a lot of people rank things like commercials or music promos culturally perhaps lower, whereas actually that's and you spoke about that before, of how much you enjoy always having a fresh challenge and learning something, and getting to try on all these different clothes or genres each time. It's not necessarily that you're wed to one thing, because even looking at your reel, I mean, of course we've just shown a tiny little piece of it. It's still very varied. I mean, it goes like across the whole genres, even though maybe the overarching one is perhaps comedy. There's elements of everything within that, right? So you really enjoy the stimulation of commercials, not just the practicalities.
Yeah.
No, well, sorry, that was a yes/no question. What did I?
No, look, I think you're right. I mean, just to clarify, I still do think that making movies is the pinnacle. Like, you know, putting a film on a screen and having, you know, a couple of hundred people watch your movie in the dark whilst eating popcorn, it to me is still the pinnacle. However, I don't think it's the end.
Right.
I don't think I don't think you get there and then you just go, okay, this is all I do from now on. I think that there's guys that I know from the Aussie scene like Pat Hughes, Hitman's Bodyguard and Hitman's Bodyguard 2. I can't remember the title of, but the guy ducks back in and does an ad from time to time. I think that it's healthy to stay fresh and it's exciting. And like I said, people aren't being paid what they used to be paid to make big movies. Put it this way, Netflix buys you out.
Whoa.
Right? Even if you own the movie. You don't get residuals anymore. That doesn't exist. Netflix buys it, it's theirs. There's no check coming in 10 years that gives you a wedge of cash like the old days. That doesn't happen anymore. And they're all going to copy that model, by the way. So you're going to get paid okay up front, but at the end of the day, you're not going to be sitting there going, woohoo, there's that check from the movie I made 10 years ago that buys me another house in Ibiza or whatever.
Yeah, you're not going to get that Shawshank deal. Right? I hear that Shawshank Redemption is one of the most profitable films of all time because of that. Even for the actors, most of the actors you don't see anymore just because they're rich for the rest of their lives, even in bit part players. But
and to clarify, that's not the reason you make films. You don't do it because you're going to make millions of dollars one day. I guess my point is that there is you're saying that there's a lot of people who go, oh, I'm going to go to features and that's it, and then I'm going to be okay. And it's like, well, just maybe have another plan. Yes, you may be the next Paul Thomas Anderson and you're a genius and you can go and just make awesome movies for the rest of your life and live a pretty comfortable life, or make movies and make ads and TV shows at the same time.
Yeah, have a varied diet.
I think it's good for you. Yes, eat your vegetables, and your fruit, but also have a bit of chocolate from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. Dane Armour says, after a few years in features, I'm chomping to get into advertising for all the reasons you're covering. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a really good example. Tom Green, who is on the Stink Films roster, wonderful director, really brilliant filmmaker, has made, I believe, 2 features and half a dozen TV series. One of the most, well-respected long-form directors in this country. Has not made anything since he came over to advertising because he's loving making ads and he's making some of the best ads out there, right? The guy's brilliant. So, I don't know when he'll make a long form thing. You'd have to ask him. But right now I know that he's very, very happy and very comfortable making really beautiful, brilliant ads. So, yeah.
That's true.
You should check out Tom Green. He's amazing.
Yes. These spots right here. Go and check them out. They are brilliant. But this brings us to... we've kind of skirted around it, and I've just had a little bit of it on thing. Your feature film, Go, or on Netflix, Go Karts, go and check it out. Or maybe Owen will say, don't go check it out. I don't know. How did this project come about? How did it come to you? Tell us the story about it.
Yeah, sure. Look, I've had a few films kind of get up, and one of them even into pre-production and then fall over. It happens, that's the reality of things, and it happens far out of your control. And they were very different films to what you're looking at here, what this film is. If you'd asked me, would the first thing I make be a kind of a nostalgic 90s, late 80s, early 90s-esque family film about go-karting, I would be like, no way. But Jamie, the producer behind it, it goes all the way back to the beginning of my career. We made music videos together, is a very successful features producer in Australia and the US. And he said, hey, I've got this idea. Do you want to direct it? And I said, no. And he said, oh, okay. And then he came back and said, what if you made it a bit like this? And I went, oh, yeah, okay, well, let's look at it. And we started putting it in development. And at the same time, I had a couple of other features that were in, various stages of development. And this one just came together really quick, really, really quick. From pitch to shoot was 8 months. And any of you who know anything about features, that is ridiculous. It's 2 years minimum normally. So, and so then we just kind of, put it together and look, the film, I'm very proud of the film. I think it's a lovely family film, but it's not, an art house masterpiece like that I thought I'd do first. It's not my Reservoir Dogs or, so, but Scorsese made Boxcar Bertha, so and that's garbage. But then he went and made Mead Streets, and it's a masterpiece. So, no, look, it is a good film. I like it for what it is. It's very mainstream popcorn, cinema.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that at all. And you know what? It was a really fun thing to make. And something like 25 million people have seen it. So it's a monstrous success.
It is.
And so I get to go and make another one, If you go and make your art house thing and a few thousand people see it, then you may not get another chance. So
absolutely,
I'm going to get to do that. And Netflix picking it up is massive and huge and wonderful. I don't love what they did to the soundtrack. Those of you who are here in the UK, you're hearing a completely different version of the film if you watch it on Netflix. There is a different soundtrack on the Australian, New Zealand, and Chinese version, which is my soundtrack. But that's the way Netflix rolls. When they buy something, they make it their own. And you know what? They may be right. Look, shitloads of people saw it. It was in the top 10 of 25 countries for a month. So what do I know? Do I think it's a better film than the version that went out in Australia? No.
Right.
But, that's the nature of the game. And these guys are powerful and they're great. They're empowering filmmakers as well. We've got a TV series at the moment that we're potentially going to be doing with them. So, there's lots of positives out of that. And having worked back in the day with the BBC on Top Gear and stuff like that, you realise how, the machinations of big corporations and big things, there's only so much you can push your own agenda.
And before, I guess it's always been a case of the creative with the vision against the brass or the corporation as a whole. But now there's another player within that, of course, and you've already made this film. You hadn't made it as a co-production with Netflix in the first place, right? So then suddenly, as a creative being, it's not just the brass or a corporation. It's your creative versus the algorithm in a kind of way, in the way the algorithm could suggest certain things or make certain decisions for you.
Yeah, I guess that's not something that you're involved in as a filmmaker, really. There's real people behind those decisions at Netflix. They're using the algorithms to make key decisions about what they're going to finance and what they're going to buy, but they don't test drive things. What they might be doing is test driving this project to see if they want to do more of this type of stuff. And the algorithm will decide that. But the algorithm is not used within the creative choices. There is still a human being that I'm having a conversation with in LA going, hey man, please don't change that piece of music, and him going, sorry dude, I disagree, and me going, all right, you're the boss, but that's the game. You can die in a ditch over these things, and you hear about Andrea Arnold on the second season of Big Little Lies, falling out with everyone. I don't know what that's over, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's about that stuff, because the American system is quite different to the European and therefore Australian kind of system, which is far more creative driven. I guess the creatives have a little bit more power. The money has a lot of power.
But still, it hasn't. It's good to hear that it hasn't put you off the idea. It's just. It sounds like you're just kind of rolling with the punches, as it were. And it's not like okay, I tried it, I got burned. I'm going to go and just carry on with other exploits. It sounds like you're quite keen to get in there and have another round of something else.
I didn't get burned. I don't think I got burned. I think it's just, it's that kind of movie as well. It's a mainstream popcorn movie that has its own particular audience, and you can't. It's much harder to argue on that kind of platform than it is if you had crafted this Robert Bresson masterpiece. That was shot in this is shot in a very specific way. That's the other interesting thing about it is that it has my aesthetic through it. But when you're trying to appeal to 13-year-old kids, it's very hard to argue that an obscure 60s funk track is more appropriate than a track by some pop artist they've heard of.
Yeah, that is true. Do you think that it's naive? I suppose is a broader thing for a young director these days to sort of pour their love and effort into breaking into the features game? And do you think that that's even a tenable career in the online era?
I definitively think it is a tenable career. I just think it's a different career to what you're sold as a young film student.
Yes.
I think, you can, if you want to just direct TV or film, you can make a living. What I would say is don't just put it all into one film. Put it into like multiple things. You know, I've got a TV series that we're developing with Fremantle, who are one of the biggest makers of drama and TV in the world, and we've got a big TV series that we're doing with them, incidentally, with Richard Roxburgh, who's in that movie. I mean, this is the thing to come out of this, right? Two of the male stars, Dan Wiley, who you saw as the cop there, and Richard Roxburgh, the curmudgeonly bloke who's not there, it's just gone. But the two of them, they're two of the biggest stars in Australia, and we've developed a TV show together, and that could theoretically get made very, very soon, and it'll be amazing. It's funny and it's beautiful, and that'll be great. So I guess I'm rambling again, but I think the thing is that you want to have multiple options. You know, I've got that too. And then my follow-up film, which was the film that was financed, 5-6 years ago and then fell over, that one's potentially about to get up. And it's very different to this film. But I am getting to make it because of this film. So, I don't think you get burned. I think you just learn and you roll and you dodge and you keep going and sidestep and try something different and just keep making films. That's the thing.
How many? I mean, you must have a drawer full of works and stuff. Is there anything in particular that you're really looking forward to besides those ones that you've just mentioned? Ultimate goals. Is there anything that you a genre piece, or is there a specific project that you're just like, man, one day I got to do this?
One day I got to do this. Yeah. Oh, look, I've always wanted to do Rian Johnson kind of did it last year. I've always wanted to do like an Altman-esque, Coen Brothers influenced kind of whodunit murder mystery in a big old country house. That would be amazing. But that we actually have, I'm working right now, there's a producer out in LA who kind of wants to do that project with me, and it's a different thing to Ryan's, thankfully. But Knives Out was, was good. But this is quite a different thing. That's kind of one of the ones that I want to do, is like a big multi-strand, but as a film, not as a TV series, because the TV series do that so well, multi-characters kind of interwoven. I'd like to do a film, go back to Altman and do a bit of a Gosford Park-esque McCabe and Mrs. thing set in, I don't know, the Belgian countryside or something.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, there's always an appetite for that's the thing with genre and being interested in playing with it and toying with it, is that there's always an appetite for it. People always want to see more and see how it could be twisted and turned into something different. Is there, as somebody who straddles both short and long form disciplines, what is there anything that you can sort of pick out in your mind? Is there something specific to short form that you really enjoy that is very different to long form, and vice versa?
Short form, I love the attention to detail. Like, I love being able to go, I want that particular era Volvo car, and I want the squirrel to look like this and the backpack to look like this, and I want to cast a guy who looks like he's from an 80s movie, and I want to have his hat blow off. And you've got the time to craft each and every single one of those tiny little pieces and shoot it precisely. And I want a warm light on her hair. In features, it's like, okay, quick, let's do her biting close up. And she goes, and you go, do it again. All right, next. And it's never going to have that level of craft to it. I mean, look, we've got a puppeteered little Tarsier monkey thing, right? And there's off camera, there's two puppeteers moving it around. Now, you can do that in features. Yes, 100% you can. And TV, but you sure as hell don't get 2 days to shoot 30 seconds worth of that feature. So that's the thing I love about short form is that
most people aren't aware of that as well. That's another sort of thing that needs dispelling, is that you believe that, or at least in pre-production, that you'll be having a lot more time in the features or long format space. But it's interesting to hear you say that's you're dreaming.
First second you don't, right? Like, you do get more time because it's a bigger thing. But, I think we did 8 weeks of pre on the feature, but I did 4 weeks of pre on that McVitie's ad. So it's a different thing. Top Gear, you get 4 hours of pre. Okay, you're shooting here and this is what you got, and okay, go. It's the attention to detail in short form I love. Long form, it's just the getting to the heart of it, the story of it, the warmth. You can make people cry. You can't make people cry in an ad. Unless it's a John Lewis.
You might get a Christmas commercial.
you can make people cry in the movies, and you can make people laugh for a long time, and you can tell a big story and explore what it is to be humans. You can't do that in advertising, I don't think. You can do some really cool shit, but you can't get deep, and you can't get to the heart of it, which is occasionally you can, yes, but it's very rare, and quite often sappy and using music to get there, whereas you can do it through performance in long form and telling big stories.
Yeah. What really, I guess, on that thing of I think you've said it a bit. What really matters to you as a filmmaker? You mentioned before you sort of consider yourself a craft filmmaker. Could you tell us sort of what that means in general, and what is really important to you? You mentioned character as a broad thing, but
I think character is my thing. Oh, I love that picture's upside down. That's cool.
Oh, is it? Oh, God.
That's good. Looks even more ridiculous. Character is everything, and I think that's what I'm probably most known for in advertising, and is my casting. I think I tend to find really interesting, warm, real people that are unique, and that's what I love about it. That's my favorite thing to do, and then craft a little world around them. And we got to do that in the film as well. We got to do that on almost everything I've done except probably Top Gear. Is that I've liked going, all right, well then we're going to put that speaker there, and it's going to be that particular color, and we're going to light it in this way, and we're going to put a stupid orange hat on the guy's head, and then mold the thing around to give it an aesthetic, even just location scouting, some of this Holden, this Toyota, sorry, lots of car ads, this Toyota commercial here, it's just a car ad, but there's a lot of big decisions in there about what colors are in where, and how you craft the image and what people wear in relation to each other. And, that blue is popping out of there, not just because the car company graded the shit out of it, but because we chose a particular palette and a location and styled it in a particular way to make it pop like that. There's no other blue anywhere else in that film, really. And that's
and so
that C there. That's
what's you mentioned Australia, and going back to film. Then, what is it about that territory? Obviously, besides being a native, that you feel is sort of more conducive to you as a creative, and giving yourself the freedom or liberty that you need to make what you enjoy.
Yeah, look, I think Australia's very blessed for a start. It's a pretty affluent place, at least has been for the last, so there is, and we've also got an incredible government support and incentive for the arts and for filmmaking. There's all kinds of ways of getting your films and TV shows made there. And because it's an affluent society, I guess we buy shits, which means the best cinematographers on the planet right now, whether it's Greg Fraser or Adam Arkapour or whatever, or production designers, Fiona Crombie, there's countless extraordinary filmmakers out there in Australia. And I could dig into why I think that's the case. I'm not sure it's my place to.
It's okay.
But,
you must have a hunch.
Oh, look, I think we this generation of Aussies got pretty lucky. We were inspired by a great generation before us, Peter Weir, etc. And then the country started getting rich. And so, idle middle-class kids like myself were afforded the opportunity to go to film school and dick around, smoking weed and hanging out with their mates and trying to make stuff on the weekend, and then, failing, and then ultimately hopefully succeeding, which a lot of kids in a lot of countries in the world don't get the opportunity to do. You don't get to go and spend 4 years working out 5 years how to be a filmmaker. You get one chance or no chances. And I think that that's something that is very, very pertinent, because filmmaking takes a long time to get good at. You don't just wake up. There's only one Paul Thomas Anderson. There's only one Steven Spielberg. Those guys could do it from a very young age. But most of us, it takes us 5, 10 years to work out how the hell to do it and do it well. So yeah, just the Aussie aesthetic. I love it because it's that's where my friends and family and the people I grew up with, and I have a production company there, and I've always returned there a lot. My family's Australian, my wife's Australian, so we go back there a lot. And I love the agencies there. I think their writing is brilliant, and as I said, I think the crews are incredible as well. So it's a great place to make jobs.
What a review! What are you doing living here again?
Yeah.
Is there? I mean, like, while we're actually stuck in the situation, we're all locked in our homes in these prisons. Is there anything that you sort of feel that is going to change heading out of this? Is there anything that you think we're going to lose as we come out of this, or anything that we're going to gain?
Wow, massive question, man.
No, what am I thinking?
Look, are we going to lose something? Yeah. Look, there's a potentially a whole year's worth of stuff that we're not going to have got to have made, and we're not going to get to see the people we work with. It's not like having a normal job. The people I work with are scattered all over the world, and we all get together in Bulgaria or Lithuania or Bangkok or Cape Town. That's a very privileged, and I'm aware of that. It sounds very wanky that I just said I get to go to all these places, but I guess my point is that one of the best things about filmmaking is that you pull together all these people and you do something together, and you're not stuck sitting next to the guy who stinks with bad breath next to you on your desk every day of the week. If you didn't like working with that cinematographer, don't work with him again. If you want to try a different editor, try a different editor. You don't have to work with the same people, or you can. And I love building a family. My AD, Sasha Martin, is the best AD in the business, and I gave him his first UK AD gig, and now he's one of the biggest there is. So I think we have a family. I work with a handful of DPs regularly. Marcus Domleo, who shot this, Wars commercial, one of my faves. Peter Eastgate, who shot my feature and a bunch of commercials. Yellow Faber out of Sweden. These guys I've worked with countless times all over the world, and I love bringing them together. And we're going to lose that to an extent, I think, because, the remote job that we talked about before, I will be working with someone who I may or may not have worked with before remotely, and you don't have quite the same rapport. So we could lose that. What are we going to gain? I think there's going to be a lot of really nice, bits of writing are going to come out of this. And I don't mean writing about coronavirus. I mean the opportunity to work on that thing that you didn't have a chance to work on because it was getting in the way. And hopefully, if you don't have 3 kids like me, then you should be writing right now. Write it, write, and watch everything. I don't get to watch anything because I'm dealing with my kids. But you should be, if you're not married and if you don't have kids, watch and read everything and write everything right now, because this is the best opportunity you're ever going to get.
Yeah, you're never, ever going to have this thing again. Even it's not even like a once in a generation thing. Hopefully it's not.
There's no sport to distract you. There's no constant parties going on. I mean, I know there's Zoom parties, but oh
god,
I'm a bit bored of those. I presume everyone else is too. Oh wow, look at this Top Gear montage.
Except for this, yes, this is some of the Top Gear. I probably shouldn't be playing this because everyone's like, don't play the Top Gear stuff.
Very, very long time.
It's wonderful to be able to sort of see all the things that you've worked on and see a distance. What is there? Is there something that you look back on and say wow, look? Is there a specific thing that you look back on and go wow, I've really moved on a lot from that. I'm now a master of that. Obviously, everybody looks back and goes, oh God, I can't believe I made that choice. But is there something that you feel that you're better at today than you were 10 years ago?
I'd like to think I'm better at everything than I was 10 years ago, because otherwise you're not moving forward. But I mean, if you want me to highlight something that I specifically think I'm better at,
I do. Yeah.
Look, I think I'm better at managing the aesthetic of a project, and how being a director in advertising particularly is as much about selling your ideas as it is about having the ideas. And I think that I'm pretty darn good at that. I think I'm infinitely superior with actors. I think you can only get better with actors. Actors are this extraordinary creature that you get to, film, and it's a challenging thing to learn how to work with them well. So and probably the thing I touched on before, casting. I think I'm really pleased with my casting. I love my cast in almost everything I've ever done. And not everything is good that I've made. I'm happy to say that, but I do think that my cast is 99% of the time is pretty darn.
What do you think is different now, or like do you feel you were doing wrong before that, or wasn't doing it completely right in the past in terms of casting?
Wow, that's a tough question. What am I doing? What wasn't I doing well then? I think it's just knowing. I'm a very instinctual person when it comes to casting. I don't make them do the line. Okay, here you go. In advertising and in film and TV, everyone on the advertising side, the agency side, and the client side, and everything, all they want to see is the person doing the line, right, or saying the thing, or playing the drums like he is here, or riding the horse or whatever. And they want to see exactly as it's going to be in the final film. Now, in reality, that's impossible, because everything that's around them isn't there. They're standing in a cold studio. They've got a director in a stupid orange hat looking at them. They've got a casting director talking to them oddly. They were 10 minutes late, so they're all sweaty and they're worried about the sweat or whatever. It's getting an actor to... So for me, when I'm doing the casting, I'm not looking at them going, okay, read the line. I'm like, I want to know who they are. I want to see what they've got to say. I want to talk to them about their world and what makes them laugh. Do they look me in the eye when I talk to them? I always shake their hand when they walk into the room to see how they respond to another human being and don't come in and just perform for me like they're a monkey. And Americans quite often do that. They just come in and they're like, whoa, hang on, why are you going to shake my hand? I've got my lines ready. I'm ready to go. So for me, it's about finding the person inside the actor. And that's my approach, which is funny when you think about how stylized and quirky some of the shit I do is. I think that's the most important thing, is find out who they are, not what their line is and what their performance is. And then I get them to do the line twice for the agency or the client, but I've already made up my mind by then. So that's what I do better, is find who they are inside of them rather than worrying about the performance. Because the performance is, if they're an interesting human and they've got something to them and they listen and they react and they respond and they look interesting, the performance will come. But if they're really boring humans and they're not engaging with you in any way, shape, or form, then but they can do the line perfectly. Yeah, I doubt that they're going to be able to do that line perfectly again on set, because there'll be all this shit going on and they weren't fed properly last night, or they stayed late with some Ukrainian hooker or something, and then they come down to set and there's all this shit going on, and then they can't do it the way they did in the casting. And then you have the agency saying, well, why can't they do it the way they did in the casting? And you're like, well, robot.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I hadn't heard that one before. I think that's a great insight. Let me just quickly jump to the questions here. Ed has asked, do you have a go-to production design team and DOP to get when you're after a signature look? I guess you've already name-checked a number of people who you might not get to have the opportunity to work with again. But is there anybody that you'd like to shout out, or specifically you're always just like, that's my guy?
Man, the list is so long. I mean, look, I think it's interesting to say that there is a signature look. I think, I think a director should have a point of view. Let's just answer that first. I think, and I think if you watch my stuff back to back here, you can see there's certain things I like doing. Some of them I'm conscious of, some of them I'm not. I don't move the camera much, as you probably have noticed. The camera is almost always locked off. Do I have a go-to team? No, not really. I mean, look, I'm very, very lucky that I work all over the world pretty regularly, so you can't always get the same people, I shot the Vigasol one that was on a minute ago with Mauro Chiarello, who's one of the best, or Chiarello, I don't know how to say his surname properly, but, he's one of the best DPs in the business, but he's just permanently shooting all over the world with Ian Pons-Jewell now. So, I don't think you can have one person, but I do think you should have 3 or 4, and you should always try someone new. Definitely, I just shot with Simon Chaudois, who's amazing. For the first time, and we did some wonderful work. But then Peter Eastgate, who shot my feature and has probably shot 100 of my commercials, I take him all over the world as well. So the simple answer is no, I don't have a go-to team, but I have a go-to probably half dozen DPs and half dozen designers.
I guess,
I very much do drive the art direction. I'm married to an ex-production designer, by the way. So I have an informed opinion about art direction, particularly more so than lighting. Nice.
Hope that answers your question. Dane Armour asks a question about previs. Dynamo, who works in Previs in Berlin, a fellow Aussie. Do you like using Previs, and do you go to your own pre-production team and let the agency handle it?
Previs, I'm not an enormous fan, no, unless it gets really complicated, and like you've said, I've moved between this stuff, which is just basically Doco, stylized Doco, to big complicated builds and explosions and floodings and things like that. So Previs, not so much, because I love actors so much and they're going to do something different to whatever you envisage. But when it comes to a big action sequence or something complicated, Previs is essential, especially with budget. You need to know exactly what you're doing. If the budgets are getting smaller, then you can't waste a shot. So, for example, on Go, we storyboarded each and every race and so every shot was storyboarded, but we didn't storyboard a single other moment in the entire film. Everything else was, let the actors go, craft it, and then frame it up. In saying that, no, and actually I'm going to correct myself. In saying that, on the feature, we did go out and map out almost a photo board in pre-production that we didn't necessarily stick to, but helped craft the schedule, because the schedule was so tight. And do I have my own team, or do I let the agency handle it? I have storyboard artists that I work with. There's 3 or 4 of them around the world that I love. Brian Deloach in LA, Max Turner in London/New York. I don't know where he is during Corona. They're brilliant, so I use them regularly. And then when it comes to post-based previs, usually just with the Post House, and I love, there's a bunch of guys. I love Catalyst in Berlin. I love The Mill in London. There's lots of people I really like. Black Kite, who just did my most recent one, which hasn't come out, were amazing as well on that film, which you'll see soon, I hope.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Another question here from Nick. Who was the most surprising? Oh my God, it's a Top Gear question.
You knew a Top Gear question was coming.
Yeah. Well, we won't. Do you want to answer that one? Who's the most surprising driver in the Stig outfit on Top Gear? I mean, good grief.
There was only one back then.
There was before he accidentally outed himself, or he.
No, it wasn't an accident. No, they didn't pay him enough. So that was Ben Collins. He's out. He's a brilliant driver. Old mate. But yeah, the Stig. I mean, there's lots of Stig stuff out there. You guys can mine that.
Yeah, go. So how did Chris Niver? I hope I'm saying this right. Novico. How did it come around? How did it come around casting Go? Yeah, tell us about the casting of Go.
Yeah, good. Kids are tough because they age really quickly. The moment you find, like 6 months in a 16-year-old kid's life is a long time. And we weren't going to go for anyone that anyone knew. So these guys are all first timers, except for the bad guy brother. There, who punches him in the guts. That's Cooper Van Grudel. He'd done a couple of bits and pieces, but both Will and Anastasia, the 2 leads, and Darius, the kind of the best mate, they were all. So I think we saw 1,300 kids nationwide. It took months, and we whittled it down. And but I loved Will from the beginning. Will is an extraordinary kid, and his sheer presence, and he's going to be a superstar. And Anastasia actually was the first one. So basically, I found Anastasia first, and then I needed to find a guy to go with her, and Will was the one. But Anastasia is a formidable talent. She's the next. The next Blanchett.
It feels like it begs that sort of thing. Like, she must hate that kind of comparison. But then again, it's a pretty good comparison if you ask.
She's the most organised, lovely, sweet. I mean, in fact, all of these kids are so sweet. They're extraordinary, wonderful, wonderful people. And there's some other guys in there as well, like Jack Connell, who I think is even on our feed here. I've just seen his name. I wonder if it's the same one. I presume it is. Those guys are local boys who we just cast, and they had a great time, I think. And then the adults, Fran, you need some stars to kind of appease distributors and confirm your finance. You don't really get. This is the other thing that some of you may not know about features. I presume you do. But talent is basically everything to securing the money. So Frances O'Connor was a big deal for us, getting her that confirmed money. And we even had an interesting period of looking at non-Australians for Richard Roxburgh's role, because our international sales agent was going to finance that. But, we ended up finding Rox, and Rox is a genius and now one of my closest friends.
Tell us more about that creative relationship, because you're saying that he's actually in your next project as well, right?
Yeah. Well, we were working together on the film, and he said, all right, well, I've had a good time. And Dan Wiley, who's also, one of my good mates now, is in it, and they're very good friends. And I'm going to take you for a walk through the house because my battery's about to go. I forgot to bring my charger. Stupid.
Don't worry. Yeah.
And so they became very good mates, and with me, and essentially Rox said, hey, what would you like to do next? We'd been eating and drinking on the weekends at fine restaurants in the Margaret River in Australia, which is a very privileged and enjoyable thing to do. And I said, well, I've got a TV show about a restaurant critic.
This is great. This is great.
An anonymous.
I like the change of location. That was exciting. Oh no, I think you've broken up. Oh, hold on one second. I think I need to resize you. I think you might have switched receiver or something. 1 second. No, you're good. Carry on. Sorry, carry on your story.
Sorry, mate.
You're in the restaurant.
Oh, it's a car or something. Yeah. So then we just started chatting about what we wanted to make, and it turned out that making a show about eating food in restaurants is a pretty enjoyable thing.
Amazing.
So that's gone into development in Australia. So hopefully that'll be filming soon.
Oh, how exciting! And when whereabouts will that be shooting?
That will be in Sydney.
In Sydney. There you go. That's where you're from, Dan, I think. And I believe Jack O'Connell says, yes, it is the Jack Connell. There for you.
The Jack Connell. I love it. Great. Hey, Jackie boy. Jack's an up-and-coming filmmaker too. Oh, nice. So he makes shorts and stuff. He's going to be our boss one day, mate. Oh,
okay. Hello, Jack. He was here yesterday, I think. Hello again. Good to meet you, man. Thank you for joining us. And again, hope that you've subscribed. It'd be wonderful if you had. Guys, get those questions in. If I've missed anything, please reiterate them. Want to take this opportunity to grab Owen, because we've tried to get him before to come down to the live event, but as is the nature of the beast, he's flying all over the place. So grab him while you can. So with the with your you've lived in, so just so I get the timeline right, so you were in Australia, then England, then went to America, and now you're back in the UK at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah, my family is English. My sister and I were the first generation Aussies, and Zoe and I have moved with the kids everywhere. So we were in the UK for about 5 years, and then we went back to Australia for a bit, and then we went to LA for 3 or 4 years, and then have come back to the UK. So I don't know how many more times we can do it, but it's a challenging thing to do, but it's also fun, and because what I realised is that it almost doesn't matter where I live, because post coronavirus it probably does, but at least for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm either at home or I'm in another country. It's not, it doesn't really matter where we live. So we could live anywhere. So maybe we'll move to San Sebastian or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, Ed asks, what do you think it is? You mentioned that you're pretty popular in France right now. What is it about your style that goes over so well in France?
Firstly, I have the best EP in the business in France, called Marine Garnier.
Nice.
And Steve Films. They are, they're exceptional, and they know how to sell me, and they know how to present me to the marketplace. So that's a help. Why? I don't know. I think because the stuff I make is a little bit odd. It's just a little bit off kilter, and the French seem to love that. I think everyone loves a bit of oddness, right? But I think that maybe what is considered my look. I don't know. I'm not sure I believe in pigeonholing necessarily, but what is perceived as my thing, my look and feel, is maybe a little dated in the UK market. There was a period there where, me and Jeff Lowe and a bunch of other guys were doing a lot of ads, and they had a certain, I guess, aesthetic. But that has moved on, and that's cool, because I think we should all move on and keep, as this talk has illustrated, my belief is that you should keep dancing and moving and changing and trying to find interesting other things to do. But in France, I don't know. It took a while to get in there, and then they just got into it. So yeah, it's really fun. I mean, they let me get away with some outrageous bits of wardrobe and hairstyles and stuff, which is great. And they love that kind of controlled color palette thing, where I strip things out and I make sure certain colors aren't there, and emphasize. My favorite piece of wardrobe ever was in an ad called Le Bon Coin, where I had a guy in a red shirt, red jacket, red trousers, and red shoes, and no one thought I could get away with it, and I did somehow. The French loved it; they thought it was genius. So yeah,
I suppose. I guess that's the taste, isn't it? It's always, and you're always going to find somebody, and you're quite active in finding places, either experimenting with stuff or finding places that are receptive to your taste and style, as opposed to necessarily just an aesthetic.
Yeah, which I think luckily, in this day and age with the internet, etc., you don't have to push yourself too hard. I probably should be better on Instagram, etc. I'm a bit old school in that sense. I don't do a lot of promoting. I did my first Insta story today about this very interview, mate.
Oh my God.
So, mate, you've dragged me kicking and screaming into the future. But I think that luckily your work gets out there if it's good enough. And I got very lucky. I got to make McVitie's, which was a huge bunch of ads that everyone saw, and after that, it seems like a few people knew who I was. Yeah,
crazy.
I think Ed's got a good one here. Can I do that one?
Yes.
You notice that the humour plays differently everywhere you go. Yes. It's a really interesting one, because what I think Australians and Brits have very similar humour, and my theory is that in Australia we grew up with British television, a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So we had Fawlty Towers was like enormous. The ABC and the BBC, shared stuff. Mm-hmm. So in my household anyway, it was rarely off ABC in my dad's house. So we just saw all the British sitcoms, The Bill was on every Saturday night, etc. So I think we have a shared history. The sense of humour and the sense of storytelling, I think, has a real crossover, whereas the Americans, didn't tend to have. Oh, look, Maureen Garnier's here. Look, the greatest EP on the planet. And so guys, that's she's in France. If you ever want to be repped in France, you should contact her.
Gonna get lots of emails now.
Look out, sorry, Maureen. Yeah, but so that shared aesthetic. But then when you go and try and make an ad in, say, Holland, right? Mm-hmm. So that Central Behir commercial that we were seeing before, that had all that very stupid kind of cars crashing and people falling off stuff, that was my aesthetic. And they were like, this is the weirdest type of comedy, but we love it. But then when I show that ad to people, people are like, oh, that's so Dutch. It's such Dutch humor. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's me. Like, that's my thing. And so what I realized is that Australians think my style is really British. The Brits think my style is really Australian. The Germans think my style is really British. The Americans think my style is super European, like French, German.
Right.
So everyone thinks that the aesthetic is not of what it actually is, which is just some stupid Aussie bloke.
Yeah. Have you
finds people in blue dresses with little white fluffy dogs funny?
Is there anything that you're just like, this will play? Because I mean, of course, in terms of reps and things like that, they will always package you and know or have a sense of how to market you to their people. But is there anything where you're just like, this is it, bang, this one will definitely work? Or has there been something that you're like, that's one I'm not too crazy about, but in a certain market,
they're just like, I love it. On a completed project or a pitch that I put in?
Oh, both, whatever comes to mind, really.
You pretty much know when you've made an ad that's going to go pretty well. Yeah. You can feel it. I think this is a good one. Like, Central Bahia, the stupidity of this at the time, whenever it was 5 years ago that we made it, it was just perfectly on point for what the kind of ads that people wanted to make. And so that probably led to me getting the Jack in the Box one that we're looking at now.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And the Sunny one with the trucks all on top of the vehicles on top of each other. They all came out of that Central Bahia. And Central Bahia came out of McVitie's and Pizza Capers. So, I think that they all do feed in and out of each other.
Have you ever been surprised by something you're just like, this is the worst thing I've made, and you're just like, oh, actually, that's turned out very nicely?
No, I think I know pretty well.
Oh, yeah?
Do I know? There's the opposite. There's a few. Like, there's some that I still really like that just never played, and maybe it's just my stupid sense of humor. I don't know. But, like, there was an ad I made about 2 years ago in the UK for On the Beach, who were like a holiday company. And it's a stupid ad. It's about a guy made of sand. He's a sandcastle man, and all this stupid shit happens. But I like it. It's really dumb, and it's really aesthetically. We shot it on like this really old zoom, so it's got this weird, messed up look, and I love it. But it got Turkey of the Week, and everyone at Stink hated it. They've never put it on a reel ever. Even Marine has never used it.
We'll play it right now.
It's kind of genius. Maybe I was just ahead of my time. I don't know. So I don't even know where it is. I haven't put it on my website. I should promote it.
I know the spot that you are talking about. I did not know that you made it, but it's.
See, this is my point. No one liked it.
Oh no, it's had like several runs, so it must be.
Oh
working.
yeah, we all have it today.
Yeah. So come on, Marine, get it out. Sandcastle guy, come on.
But I think Sunny was the one that probably surprised me the most with its success. Like I think I knew Sunny was cool, and everyone else had pitched to make Sunny with the Tower of Vehicles in post. And I said, no, we'll do this for real. And I was known for doing everything in camera with animatronics and all that kind of stuff. And so then I did it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. I like it. It's a one-shot 60-second ad. It's nice. It's kind of got a bit of scale, and that just everyone loved that. That still gets mentioned a lot. I get that, people asking about that when I'm pitching all the time. Look at you, you've live pulled it up. That's brilliant.
That's what I do. When things aren't breaking, it goes very well.
Yeah.
Oh well, thank you so much.
So that's 2 shots. That one.
Just
so you know, those of you who want to know, how we pulled this off. That's still a single shot.
Wasn't
and
it?
Then there's a cut.
You know what would have worked very well for that one? In planning it, Previs with a certain.
Previs, yeah. Who was our man?
Dane Armour. Dane, are you with Machine? Is it Machine that you're with?
Dane, funnily enough, we did actually Previs that one to an extent. That was a wow. Where did you find this one?
This one, it's on your website.
I've forgotten about this ad.
It's all on your website.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's.
I remember we hired the piece of music from Social Network for this. Atticus Ross did.
Yeah, wow, that's definitely why it's not playing with any sound. I'm not getting another takedown on that.
This was an interesting one. This is an interesting one for people who are up and coming commercials directors. This is like no one tells you that quite often you get asked to do like 7 ads in one package, which is awesome because you get lots of shoot days and therefore you make lots of money. But what it means is that you have this weird balancing act of assets where you have to choose the one that you want to spend, make, because they're not all going to go on your reel, right? But you can't let the agency know that you're favouring one over the other, even though they quite often favour one over the other as well.
Yeah,
but so this one was like, I think we made 5 ads or 6 ads in like 7 or 8 shoot days, and this was one of them. And this one got shot in one day, one like night.
Crazy.
Quite interesting.
Okay, so here are the other ones here, guys. You can check them out on his site. Go through and just have a little play. I won't play them now because that'll slow the stream down. But yeah, definitely more here. Before we go, if anybody has any other questions, please get them out. Oh, mathematics. Sorry, he's mathematic in Paris. I thought you were in Berlin. Where are you at there?
Dane, I was at mathematic in Paris. There you go, Dane. Marine. You guys are out of lockdown. You can go have coffee.
Oh God, don't even. I don't want to know about that kind of stuff. Before we go, I would like to check with you. Obviously, you've thought about it a lot. If you were to go back and give advice to your younger self, of one thing or a couple things to say, listen, here's some shortcuts, here's some advice. What would you tell young Owen to do?
Young Owen. So I've got to step outside myself for a second and say, what would I have done that would have been better?
Or not? Would you? It's entirely possible for you to go back and say, I'm not going to tell him, that bastard, anything. He has to learn all these lessons.
I think probably maybe form stronger relationships with other directors earlier. I think that is something that young filmmakers, there is a sense of, in some ways, of it's me versus them, and it's not true. It's bollocks. And so as a young director, I definitely went, oh, I'm going to be really good friends with this cinematographer and this editor and this sound designer. And I don't think I actively didn't pursue directors as friends, but I do think that I could have actively fostered better relationships with some of the guys that I started out with as directors. And we could have formed greater collectives, etc. I think that there's people like Blue Tongue Collective or Canada, who those guys, or Tractor, that are partially collectives, and I think that don't just because someone else is pursuing the same job as you, don't assume that they are anything other than someone you can collaborate with or talk through, or they might end up writing something for you, or you might write something for them, or whatever. And I think that is something that in my early years I didn't do. Definitely I found it later, and now I own, I'm a partner in a production company, so I love working with those other directors, etc. But I think that that's something I could have been better at earlier on, because I think I would have grown faster and learnt more.
I think that's fantastic advice. Letting go of a little bit of that jealousy and ego. It's not all. There's things to be gained through just giving up that strange competitive edge, and find collaborators, find people that you like to work. And I suppose, especially with working across the world and different building those relationships, it's very important that you have that.
It's lovely being in Berlin or something and hearing that there's another director in town shooting something, and you're like, yeah, let's go for a beer, and then you can go and bitch about the agency together, or share great editors that you've worked with, or I don't know, talk about the last great book you read, or whatever, or just get drunk. That's fun. So
get drunk.
Hanging out with other directors and talking about the world, because I think sometimes we're pretty interesting people. I hope I've been vaguely interesting.
No, it's been super interesting. I'm sure our audience will agree. Thank you so much. I know that you've got a family to look after and a whole bunch of creative endeavors. So I really.
I'm avoiding having to do anything with them. Don't go, Ross.
I've got to go. I got a tyrant downstairs. But no, I really appreciate your time, and of course we haven't in this case we've touched on a few of those productions in general things, but I would love for you to come back and at a later stage and unpick a lot of those, bring them up on the slab, and we can peel them apart. And it's really interesting to hear somebody who's not only a creative but is interested in them in other endeavors and stuff as well. It's very wonderful to chat to you about it. So. I'll leave it at that. Thank you all so much for joining us. Make sure that you follow Owen across all of those different platforms that we outlined. Say hi to each other. Definitely go and bomb Stink Paris. No, don't bomb Stink Paris. I mean, just figuratively. Say hi to Maureen and the others, and reach out to Owen. I'm sure that he'd like to answer all of your really inane questions about Previs Dane. And thank you all so much, and hopefully I'll catch you again tomorrow. And have a good night.
Thanks, babe.
Bye.
It was fun.
Oh no! Please, final words.
I was just going to say thank you so much. It was fun, and I think it's great that you're doing this for the community. And feel free, people, to just drop us a message. I can't promise I'll get back to you straight away, but I will get back to you eventually. But yeah, thank you to Ross and Ed and the whole team, because I think you guys are awesome and doing great things. And I look forward to doing a live one sometime.
Yes.
Soon.
If we could ever catch you, I doubt we will. But we can try.
Who knows, man? There may be no work after this, but we can all go to bars together and talk about when we did work.
Yes. Or sit outside of them and just paper bag it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about the projects that you have sort of in the mix once we can all talk about it and see the films that you've worked on as well recently. Thanks. And if we don't speak to you before, good luck with the remote directing thing. They're very exciting. I'm fascinated by it. Film, you should
There could be another whole talk. There you go.
Yeah. I think you should definitely take pictures of it, or film the experience, or a diary of this is what I love about it. This is what I never want to see again.
There's a great little series that a director called Benji Weinstein, who's a very good director, did recently. You guys should type it in, Benji Weinstein, about Zoom calls and agencies and stuff. It's really nicely done.
Benji Weinstein. Look it up, guys. I'm going to look it up right here. Have a great day. Thank you so much, guys. And I will catch you later. Bye. Owen, you hung up. Goodbye.